Hi, good morning. I'd rather say good evening. It depends where you are in the world, but this is the FoodSense special webinar. So we do like to do a FoodSense webinar at least once a week, but we've just decided to add an extra one in to answer some questions that came in just near the end of last week. So let me jump straight into it and say this is FoodSense. Just reaching out actually because I have a FoodSense here anyway, and that's the easiest way to introduce it. So FoodSense is really an ingredients testing system. It's mostly known for testing capsaicin in chili sauces. And in fact, I'm actually going to show some scientific papers in a few minutes where those papers were written in 2020. So as of today, it's now 2024. So you can see that this system has been around for at least 4 years. And I should know that because I'm one of the developers. But in fact, it was around many years before that. So I will be talking about FoodSense primarily. Sometimes they call it Scoville meter. We used to call it the chili pot many years ago. But at this point, we're on FoodSense Generation 4. Let me go forward a little bit quicker and be a bit more efficient with your time. Just want to say that anyone who's a client of FoodSense, i.e. a user of FoodSense, you get personal online training. Though I do find these days, because the system is so simple, I mean, the manual is so uber thin. And it's only uber thin because actually I think it represents the simplicity of the system. It's not like an HPLC system. Some of you will be familiar with high performance liquid chromatography, which I also will mention today as well. And I'll talk about validation against HPLC. Unlike those kind of systems, this is super simple. It's got one button on and off. It does have an app that goes with it as well. In fact, I've got the app on my phone there. Anyway, everyone gets personalized online training. And the reason I bring up the manual is because actually people get these systems these days, and by the time we get online to train them, they've already trained themselves. So that's always kind of gratifying. We do weekly webinars. So somebody's a current client, so I'll be doing two things today: talking about some questions that came in from a potential client, and also dealing with some data from an actual client. And then we also have monthly webinars and demos. So there'll be a monthly demo this week, and there'll be a link, etc. After underneath this video. Question number one, we got some questions from Australia, and I'll answer them shortly. One of them is really about who's using this system, and the other one's about sort of validation of this system. So you'll see some couple of papers from a guy called Charlie Rower at the University of Minnesota in the USA. I was aware that he had done one paper on this, and it's kind of nice because it's in the public domain. A lot of people, in the sort of chili industry, especially the commercial side of chilies, don't really want their details all over the internet, what they're using, how they're doing stuff. But Charlie's an academic, so it's nice that he actually does use it and he writes scientific papers on it. And I'll also kind of reference a video that's online at the moment by a well-known chili breeder. And let me get to that video and you'll see that as well. So we've got some questions from Australia. One of them is about who's using it, and then the other question then is about validation. Question number two is really just we did some testing for a client. They have quite a mild chili. The nice thing about chili sauce, the nice thing about ZP is that we test very hot sauces, 100,000 Scoville heat units. We test mild things, and it's only relative, but like Tabasco sauce from the McKinley company is quite mild, about 5,000 Scoville heat units. So I will discuss that today. We do have a live webinar. Live demo, so that'll be on the 27th of March. One in the morning, one in the afternoon. We find that the one in the morning doesn't quite cut it with Western Australia, so that's a little bit of a gap for us. But mostly it does. We can get people in from Perth, we can get people in from India for the morning sessions, and then a bit of Europe. And then we find the afternoon sessions particularly good for the guys in the USA, Central America, Canada, South America, etc. So who is using this? It's a bit hard to answer that question because a lot of people do not want. It's kind of trade secret. How you do processes is often a sort of a business secret, and so people don't want their names, and they don't want to be bothered either. But this is at least a video that's worth watching, and it'll give you a sense of the kind of people who are actually using this system. It's easily worth saying that we have people using this system across the globe. I can think of definitely the USA, definitely many countries in Europe, definitely in places like Indonesia and Thailand and obviously India and China are using this. So there's many clients around the world, and this is a video that you'll find quite interesting. Any link, by the way, I'll have already put it underneath the YouTube video as well, so that you can watch that. In that particular video, which features Ed Curry, the guy who grew both the Carolina Reaper, which was the old world record holder for hottest chili, and Pepper X. We were testing a couple of his sauces with his blessing, and we were trying to rank them. You can watch the video to find out actually the outcome of it. But it does highlight one of the nice aspects of FoodSense, because we can theoretically, if we know the ingredients of a potential chili sauce, and by the way, FoodSense is not only applicable to chili sauces, it's also chili powders, oils, resins. We can deal with all sorts of complicated matrices or samples. But that, I just want to say that we can actually calculate what we think the hotness of a chili sauce is actually going to be just from measuring the incoming material, in this case the chili itself. But we do understand that even if we know that it's made of 91% Pepper X, which has a dry weight expectation of about 2.6 million Scoville heat units, some people do get a little bit confused between dry weight expectations of a chili pepper and its wet weight. Wet weight is generally sort of 1/10 the hotness or Scoville heat unit of the dry weight. That said, we can calculate the expected Scoville heat unit, just as theoretical, of the chili sauce in this case experience, which was made from 91% Pepper X. This is not really the purpose of this particular video, but I will mention the University of Oxford shortly, that the technique that the FoodSense Generation 4 is actually using is something called voltammetry. Voltammetry is very... the fingerprint of chili is very sort of evident, that you can't mistake it for something else. And the intensity of these peaks is also indicative of how much of that capsaicin is actually in that particular sample. So we have run things like experience, and we've, in fact, when we were doing this kind of work, we were diluting their sauces by 1,000 times because it was so intense with capsaicin, which will be question 2 today. I've got a question 2 after this initial series of questions where actually we only do 1 in 10 dilution, and that represents it's a much milder sauce, but that was 1 in 1,000. And we actually measured this 5 times. This is a little bit different, see, from HPLC. How many times does somebody test the hot sauce by HPLC? Often just 0, because it's too expensive and takes too long. At most once, probably, because that's all they can afford. And we actually, and our users test their stuff several times. Why is that? Because chilies, chili powders, chili sauces, chili resins, they are not homogeneous. They are heterogeneous. If you want to get a sense of the, let's say, true average hotness of a batch or a sauce, you have to measure it several times. So we'll actually make up 5 samples, test them 5 times. And in this case, test on the FoodSense, we got 94,000 Scoville heat units, 83,101, 93,000, 93,000. Our representative in Australia is quite a scientist, so he'll see that that's kind of quite normally distributed. And we have a relative standard deviation of 7%, which we were quite happy with. So as I say, there's a good video out there introduced by Ed Curry. That's definitely worth a video, a watch, especially if you're kind of interested in the kind of applications or people who are using this kind of product. Question number 2 is about validation of the system. So, if you're going to measure the Scoville heat unit of a chili product today, how would you do it? You can use HPLC, you can use panel testing. Nobody's doing panel testing. You can do guessing, which is using your quality manager to try and assess it, or you can use FoodSense. HPLC is expensive. It leads to what we call under testing. You'll see today that whenever we talk about chili testing, we'll be talking about we've done 5 tests or 4 tests. It's because it's so quick and easy to do that you want to test it a few times, make sure that that you truly get a good accuracy on it, and then by calculating standard deviation, we can actually see what our precision's like as well. HPLC is expensive, so it needs under testing. It's also slow. If you physically do it, it takes hours, and if you just send the sample off, it can take a long time to get the results back. It's a black box. You really don't know what's going on there. So people take these certificates of analysis, and we see this all the time from the HPLC test houses as, this is the gospel. It's got a number on it. It's got a signature. It must be right. You've no sense of that. You've never seen the test necessarily done. The FoodSense is easily 1/50th of the cost. It means people could do lots of testing. We've just now cut the cost of these chili sensors. I've got one here. These chili sensors by 50% because the user base has gone up so much. We're able to then share, as the user base goes up, we're then able to share the benefits with our clients. We've actually just cut the cost of sensors by half. It gives fast results. Come to the webinar on Wednesday, and even if you can't come, just sign up for it, because then you will get a recording of the video anyway. With that said, we can do fast results. And it's also very transparent as well. Let's be straight. You get the result there and then on your phone. You do not have to be a scientist. You do not have to be an electrochemist to use this system. But it's very transparent. In fact, all the data does actually go to the cloud and is stored up in the cloud. So at any one time, we know what you tested. When I say we, you know. By the way, we can't see your data unless you choose to share it with us, which is actually something that people do, because then they can actually get some confirmation that everything's working okay as well. But it's transparent because all the raw data goes to the cloud. Who did it, when they did it, what time they did it, and actually the raw signal as well as the Scoville heat unit is all saved automatically to the cloud. HPLC, which is kind of the thing that people kind of are most familiar with, high performance liquid chromatography or high pressure liquid chromatography. I always used to call it high pressure, but my experience with it starts in 1997, so now people seem to be calling it high performance liquid chromatography, but it is 2024, so maybe the P has changed over the years. So when this comes into the HPLC house, they're doing an extraction, they're doing a dilution, they're doing an injection onto the column. They get a chromatogram, which you never see, and they also have a calibration routine that you never see, but you get the outcome of it. So there's all these kind of, there's all these processes, and it's actually quite manual. And by the way, at the end of it, you get a certificate of analysis, which people just take as the gospel. So there's no transparency on it, and there's definitely no sense of error on that, and that's fine. If you're happy, you're happy. But we actually find out that a lot of people, they generally understand that there is actually a problem going on here. And we always say, look, if you're so comfortable with it, take the same sample, send it to a lab, get a result. Take the same sample, send it to different results. Different lab, you get a different result. Take the same sample, send it to a third lab, you get a third result. So I can absolutely assure you that inter-lab variability is there. And you'll also find that intra-lab variability. Take the same sample, send it to the lab, get a result. Take the same sample, different name, send it to the same lab, you get a different result. Take the same sample, different name, send it to the same lab, you get a third result. They won't be the three, all three of them will not be the same. So there is a problem. Now, so strictly speaking, see, whenever you do a analytical technique, here's a certificate of analysis that I found online. You get the, in this case, it's 11,636 Scoville heat units. I can see it's done by HPLC because it's using what's called the AOAC 1995.03. Fine. There's no uncertainty at all indicated. But at ZP, because the cost of test is low, therefore you can actually do multiple tests and get that sense. Now, a bit of history here. Well, it's not that deep history. This is Professor Richard Compton. He was at the University of Oxford. You can obviously Google Richard Compton at University of Oxford, and you'll find out that he wrote the original paper on measuring the Scoville heat units of chilies. You'll be able to find his paper online. And there's also some other interesting papers. There's a gentleman called Charlie Rower at the University of Minnesota. He helps growers in the US with chilies. And I was aware of his work. Now, Charlie, we've never sponsored him. We never gave him a free unit. He just bought it on his own volition. And actually, was quite an early adopter of it. So he actually published a paper in 2020, which I was aware of and I was promoting it. But then we have a very good sales support gentleman in Australia, and he actually just found out another paper from him. So Charlie's carried on using the device, which is always a sign of a good technology, where you've published papers that in 2020 and you're still publishing papers again in 2022 using the technology. So I'm going to try and get back in touch with Charlie soon and find out what he's up to again. But that's just to kind of say that Charlie's using this. He's a scientist. He's an independent scientist. I did speak to him a few years ago, and he said, in my paper, I only test each sample on the HPLC once because I could only afford to do it once. But actually, I tested everything in triplicate on the FoodSense, and it's because it was cheap and low cost to do. So he advocates both the fact that he liked the correlation with HPLC and the fact that it was, he could do more testing because he understands what he's actually doing is taking chili peppers or chili fruit peppers, blending them, preparing all the sample. He knows it's heterogeneous. He knows he can't just take one sample and send it to the HPLC. It's ridiculous. So he tests everything 3 times to get a better sense of it. Now I'm going to slightly change gear here. And what I should have said actually on the previous one was there's a link here. You can find Charlie's papers. If you go up to that, then it'll take you to those to Charlie's papers. They're worth a read. As I say, he has no financial connection with ZP. I didn't realize what he was up to until he'd actually started doing it. But it's nice because he kind of endorses without being promoted by ZP in any way whatsoever. Question number 2, mild sauces. So we've received, or rather we have a client who's got 3 sauces. These are mild. See, so we've got we've measured these sauces. I'll give you the results first, and then I'll sort of dig into it. So on their smartphone, when you do this kind of work, we get, one of these sauces, for example, is about 1,805 Scoville heat units. One of them is about 2,794 Scoville heat units, and the other one is 1,688 Scoville heat units. The reason that I've put some RSDs in here, some relative standard deviations, is actually we've tested these either 4 times or 5 times. So the precision is good. So we're happy with the accuracy, and the precision, is fairly tight considering this is a natural product, heterogeneous thing, let's say, going on here. And the nice thing is all the data, we've got a cloud system called Julie. It's in its 2nd iteration. Julie's absolutely fantastic. It's getting close to 10 years at this point, so we've been putting sort of data in the clouds when the cloud was probably somewhat in its infancy. And if we zoom in, by the way, we're doing a 1 in 10 dilution here because the sample is quite mild. If we zoom in, then we can literally see, I'm not so happy with these little waves here, but that said, it doesn't interrupt the overall signal, so we can see that actually it's color coded. We can see that there's different colors here which represent different sources. So we've got these 3 kind of sources. And the nice thing about ZP as well is when we sort of tell somebody, look, your chili sauce is either at 2,500 Scoville heat units or less than 2,500 Scoville heat units, we have done, I want to, it's not hyperbole to say at ZP we've done thousands of tests. And then we've got so many clients out there that, we see, because of the cloud system, whenever somebody has a problem, they can choose to share the data with us through that cloud. So, we've looked at a lot of data. So we have a really good sense of actually, just immediately that everything's working okay. So that's a bit of a service that we provide to actual clients, but I was able to look at their data and I saw that their source was mild. Then if we're sort of challenged on it, we can actually show them, sources from something that's quite very well characterized and publicly documented, which would be like Tabasco sauce, and they can line their raw data up and say, okay, fair enough, I'm also quite mild as well. So this kind of mildness here is essentially these are milder than a Tabasco sauce. And I would once upon a time thought Tabasco sauce was quite hot, but certainly not anymore. So don't forget we have a live demo on the 27th of March. The link to the live demo every month there will be another live demo, so that link will keep being updated, so you can just click on it and you'll find the next month's live demo there as well. As I say, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. We do appreciate it. It doesn't quite work for Western Australia, but if you sign up anyway, it will automatically send you a recording afterwards. So I just want to say thank you. I just want to remind you that at ZP we make the FoodSense Generation 4. It's a food ingredients tester. Most people these days, or most of the user base, are actually using it for measuring the hotness of chilies. But we do also do have, it does also do total antioxidative capacity, and it also does gingerol as well for ginger. So ginger shots is a bit of a thing. If you come to the webinar, I'll be very interested in people telling us there what they want, other food ingredients analytes they want. So if you have any questions for ZP on this, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.